Week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire this week. The first guy, Derek Carr, the New Orleans Saints. Are the same team. They've been passing the football a lot ever since Alvin Kamara came back, and he's catching a lot of balls out of the backfield. Taysom Hill's getting involved. You got Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed. So you got some good weapons on the offense, even though Derek Carr, the numbers in terms of real life haven't looked good, but in terms of fantasy football, he's at least scored 18 or more fantasy points the last 3 weeks in a row. Week 6, Houston, 353 pass yards, a touchdown, and then though in Week 7 versus Jacksonville, 301 pass yards, a touchdown, an interception, 14 rush yards, and a 2-point conversion. So Week 8 here could be a mini shootout between them and the Indianapolis Colts. We just saw the Colts and Browns. These two teams combined almost for 80 points in Week 7's ball game. So right now the Colts give up the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So with good weapons, and Carr still learning the system, obviously, but putting up points and getting his yards. He's available right now in 65% of fantasy leagues. And if you're in a pinch for a quarterback, I give him an ad this week. The next guy's Gardner Minshew of the Indianapolis Colts. So staying in the same game here. Gardner Minshew actually had a good ball game in that Week 7 loss to the Cleveland Browns. 305 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 29 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 3 fumble losses. Obviously not good. 4 turnovers in the game here for Gardner Minshew, but he put up numbers. He's got good wide receivers. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs emerging this season. Jonathan Taylor looked good in this game out of the backfield, and a good, decent matchup versus the New Orleans Saints. For this season, Gardner Minshew, he's been pretty decent. One of the better backups, in my opinion, in a league. At least the guy could come in, throw the football around the yard, and make some plays with his legs. And right now, he's available in tons of leagues at 92%. So if you're in a pinch 2-quarterback league, or you're just looking for a streaming option with a lot of quarterbacks struggling and injuries as well, I would give him an ad this week. Next quarterback's Kenny Pickett of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Kenny Pickett, I thought coming into the year, he would be a player that would break out and be solid for fantasy owners. But he really hasn't done much this season, even though this Pittsburgh Steelers team right now, 4-2 on the year. So Pickett, the last 2 games, Week 5 versus Baltimore, 224 pass yards, a touchdown. And then Week 7 at Los Angeles Rams, 230 pass yards, and a rushing touchdown in that one. So right now, good matchup on paper in Week 8 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Give up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. Deontay Johnson's back in the lineup. You got George Pickens, who's emerging in his second year. You got Jalen Warren out of the backfield. So they got some weapons, obviously, in this offense is Pittsburgh. They just got to open up the offense a little bit more. So right now, Pickett, yes, he's available in 80% of fantasy leagues. His ceiling's pretty much been 15, 20 fantasy points this year. But deeper leagues, same thing like I said with Minshew, with injuries and guys struggling, I think Kenny Pickett could be a decent option versus Jacksonville defense. Available in 80% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback's Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. So Bryce Young, so far this season, it hasn't been a good rookie year at all for him. But Week 8, a pretty decent matchup versus the Texans. I give up the 11th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So right now, available in 90% of fantasy leagues, here's Bryce Young. Him and Adam Thielen are on the same page. I know the weapons aren't graded all pretty much. Hayden Hurst, he's been up and down. DJ Chark, he's been okay so far this season. And you got Jonathan Mingo, the rookie, trying to emerge. But anyway, the last few games here for Young, Week 5 at Detroit, 247 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And then Week 6 in Miami, 217 pass yards and a touchdown. So right now, maybe they'll open the playbook up a little bit more. Here's this Panther team. Frank Reich, he's not going to be calling the plays anymore for this offense. He'll go to the offensive coordinator. And maybe a different scheme and a maybe different setup could help Bryce Young and play to his strengths. He was obviously the first pick overall for a reason. So I think Bryce Young, after the bye week, getting a new playbook and the offensive coordinator calling the plays now, I think it can help him a little bit. And right now in a decent matchup versus the Texans in terms of giving up passing yards and points. He's a pickup this week in the 5th and final quarterback I looked at off the wires. P.J. Walker of the Cleveland Browns. I know it didn't look great for Walker in relief, but once again, Deshaun Watson went down, and he left the game in the first quarter, and he didn't come back at all. So right now, decent matchup at the Seattle Seahawks coming up in Week 8. That give up the 12th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So right now, P.J. Walker, the last 2 games I know haven't been good at all, really. Week 6, a tough one versus San Francisco, 192 yards, 2 interceptions. And then Week 7 in Indianapolis, 178 pass yards and interceptions. So right now, they got to open it up a little bit more. I know Jerome Ford, he left the ball game with an ankle injury. And now they're down to Kareem Hunt and Pierre Strong over there is Cleveland Brown team. So right now, with a decent matchup, and possibly third week in a row he's going to start here is Walker. He's available right now in 99% of fantasy leagues. That's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire for week 8 of the fantasy football season.